Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate in Lakota means people. Brought to you by Native Sun News Today. Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Tim and Jackie Gallego. Tim is an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Our guest today is Mr. Bill May, Chief Executive Officer and General Counsel of Black Hills Surgical Hospital. Thank you for being here, Mr. May.
Thanks for having me.
I understand that at one time you were the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce here in Rapid City. Could you talk a little bit about that in your history in working with them?
Certainly. 2 years ago, I was the chair of the Black Hills Chamber of Commerce. Prior to that time, I was a member of the board of directors. So it's about an 8-year commitment. You start out as a board member, and if you want to progress, and people want you to progress, then you can progress up the ladder. And that's what I did, and finished off my term on the board as the chairman of the board.
Sure. What are some of the highlights in your time there with the chamber?
Well, there were many, but I think that one of the highlights that I like to focus on was we further defined our mission at the Chamber of Commerce, and we focused on areas that we thought needed to be improved in Rapid City or needed attention. So some of the areas that I focused on while I was chair involved increasing economic development and economic activity in Rapid City, increasing air service in Rapid City, improving Native American relationships between Native Americans and whites, working relative to a potential civic center, bringing a new civic center to the community, and advocating for education. And that was a very successful part of what we did, because that was the year that we were able to get teacher salaries raised in South Dakota.
Great work, by the way.
Well, it was a group effort by a lot of people, but we were very proud that the Rapid City Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, and most of the other Chamber of Commerces, were all in favor of adjusting teacher salaries to make sure that those salaries were competitive compared to our neighboring states. So we look at that as a big success.
I understand that the Chamber has kind of made a pledge recently for inclusiveness and improving race relations here in town. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The genesis for the pledge was Community Conversations. And the group, Community Conversations, does great work in our community to work with Native American relationships and to deal with inequalities that have existed either historically or continue to this day. And part of what they did was they came up with the idea of a pledge where businesses would post this pledge, and it would be basically a promise or a covenant to be inclusive and treat people of all ethnicities, including Native Americans, with respect and dignity when they come into our places of business. So that was something that we did as the Chamber of Commerce. We adopted that idea. We created the pledge card with the help of Community Conversations, and then many of our businesses would post that in their window, and that would be kind of a sign that that business was in tune with the whole idea of inclusiveness.
I was actually in a restaurant earlier this week, and I walked in, and one of the servers, or I think it was the host, had mentioned and said, "Hihani washte," good morning in Lakota to me. And I felt that was so welcoming and such a warm greeting. And that must be a part of that same movement then, because it was a non-native who had said that to me.
Really? Well, I don't know if it was part of the movement or not, but I think that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Definitely.
That people would welcome you in that way.
Definitely.
Honor your culture.
Definitely. So at Black Hills Surgical Hospital, many natives use the hospital up there, and so could you talk a little bit about the Native Americans that come into the surgical hospital there?
Absolutely. We are privileged to treat many Native American individuals at our hospital. If you've ever been to the hospital, much of the art is Native American themed art. So we really do honor our patients, and our Native American patients in particular. We hold close. And so we're primarily an orthopedic and spine hospital, so we do a lot of total knees and total hips and spine surgeries and shoulder surgeries and foot surgeries, but we also do general surgery, abdominal surgeries, gallbladders, podiatric surgery of the foot, just a whole ophthalmology, a whole raft. But yeah, it's a pleasure to treat the Native American community. It's a privilege for us. Probably 4% or more of our patients are from the Native American culture, and so it's an honor to treat them.
4% is actually a significant number when you talk about the actual number of visits that come through there.
Yeah, it is. It's a significant number. I don't think that there's a day that goes by that we don't have at least a very strong contingent of people of Native American heritage at our hospital, and we try to take the best care of them that we can. Obviously, what we're about at Black Hills Surgical Hospital is quality surgical outcomes. And we're also about serving people and serving families. But what we really want to focus on is making sure that people get better and they get healed. And that happens through a combination of skilled surgeons as the starting point, skilled nurses, and those caregivers are the ones that ultimately create that outcome. So for you, if you have surgery, you probably have pain, or you probably have limitation in movement. I can't go up steps like I used to. I can't do this the way that I used to. Our goal is to change that to a positive outcome so that pain is gone or pain is minimized and mobility is restored. That's what we want to do. And so we try as much as we can to provide you with what you need to have that desirable outcome, clinical outcome.
So it isn't just so much about the surgery itself, but it's about the support services following the surgery.
Absolutely.
From the nurses to the staff. And understand that you are working and you have worked on improving patient care there at the Black Hills Surgical Hospital. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. We have been recognized as the 6th best hospital in the United States in terms of value-based purchasing. And that's just a way of saying that they analyze hospitals now after the Affordable Care Act to determine whether or not they have low complications, low infection rates, good outcomes, etc. And we were very privileged in 2015 to be ranked 6th nationally out of like 2,800 hospitals. So that's something that we've done to show, high levels of quality and care, low infections, low readmissions, low complications, all of those things. And that's a conscious effort on our part to make sure that we're following the best practices and the protocols that are out there.
And so, when is these studies done? I mean, is there going to be another one this year, or how does that work in regards to these studies that come out that rank hospitals in different areas?
It's annual, and there's there's not a lot, but there's getting to be a fair number of entities out there that rank hospitals. So there's things like health grades and Leapfrog and care checks, and then there's the federal government, Medicare. Medicare will do the HCAP program, which is a survey card that are given to patients in hospitals where the patient rates the hospital. And for those, we're privileged to have done extremely well, where 95% of our patients, 94% of our patients would recommend us to a friend or family member. And again, that puts us like in the top 50 in the United States that get that rating out of 4,000 hospitals.
Yeah,
so it's like, we're proud of that.
Definitely should be. When we look at the visitors there, you talked about 4% of them being Native American, thereabouts. And so the care that they're receiving, a lot of that is reimbursed through IHS.
Correct.
And through the Affordable Care Act. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and what the general, and I'm not an expert on IHS reimbursement, so I don't want to misspeak. by talking about stuff that I don't have great knowledge on, you know. But you know, generally the federal government is one of the larger payers for healthcare services in the United States. It's not just IHS, it's Medicare, it's Medicaid, it's TRICARE for military members. And those are all federal programs. And generally, they all have common, more common reimbursement models. It's kind of like we reimburse. Typically, the government will reimburse based on a diagnosis-related group. So it might be knee pain or total knee. And so IHS will, you know, follow a similar pattern where they'll code that and it will come in. And sometimes with IHS, this is again where I'm getting outside of my expertise, there's never a problem with getting paid. Sometimes there's a problem with when you get paid. Okay, so that there's a lag in terms of those. But that doesn't mean that Black Hills Surgical Hospital doesn't love to take Native American patients or IHS patients. We take them all when they come, when they get their health care needs. And so that's how the IHS system works. You know, the Affordable Care Act, of course, is much broader than just the IHS issue. It's the whole mandating of insurance coverage for everybody, the universal mandate they call it. Everybody has to have insurance coverage, and you know the goal was to get healthy people into the insurance market so that they could, in effect, you know, lower the risk. So people who had insurance were just not the elderly and ill, and you had some healthy people that were paying into the system but weren't using as much of the services. So that was really the wonderful part about the Affordable Care Act, is it increased the number of people, and it also notably allowed for an expansion of Medicaid, which is for the indigent in America.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a break, Mr. May.
Sure,
When we come back, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. So we'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
This year, for a Christmas like no other, shop the store like no other. Prairie Edge Trading Company. And while you're in the store, don't forget to register to win a $1,000 gift certificate. Prairie Edge, like no other.
You know, it's really busy in the coffee house, not just in the morning, but all day long. And it's really important that we serve our customers hot coffee that's ready for them when they're ready for it.
We get that, Michelle. And our team at Black Hills Energy will make sure you have the electricity you need to keep that Java nice and hot. Speaking of hot Java, how about a cup for the road? Black Hills Energy. Life sponsored by Energy.
You can't predict life's ups and downs. You just give it all you've got to stay on top. But it's easier with a partner like Security First Bank. Since 1898, we've been riding with you through the country's biggest ups and downs. And this is where we'll stay. Security First Bank, a relationship you can count on. Member FDIC.
Native Sun News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Sun News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Sun News covers the other side of the story.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Our guest tonight is Mr. Bill May, Chief Executive Officer and General Counsel of Black Hills Surgical Hospital here in Rapid City. Thank you again, Mr. May, for being here.
Pleasure, thank you.
Before the break, we had discussed Medicaid expansion. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So as part of the Affordable Care Act, there was a program where states could opt to expand their Medicaid program. So Medicaid is the program that provides care to the indigent. Sometimes it's called Title 19. And what the Affordable Care Act did was it provided dollars so that states could, in effect, expand the number of people who qualify for Medicaid in their particular state. And those dollars would be there on the front end, may not be there as robustly in the back end. But the theory was, expand your program, and this will work in conjunction with the universal mandate that requires everybody to have insurance coverage. So for somebody who was 29 years old and making $70,000 a year, they're not going to qualify for Medicaid, but they're going to be required to get coverage under the universal mandate. So they have to go to the exchanges or some other thing like that that was created by the Affordable Care Act to buy their coverage. But for somebody who's 29 years old and makes $20,000 a year or $15,000 a year, they could qualify for Medicaid and get their health insurance through Medicaid. And what the Medicaid expansion did was, for that person, it would say, well, you could even go up to, say, $24,000, and I'm just guessing at numbers, okay? Sure. But you could make $24,000 a year, but you could still be eligible for Medicaid. So the goal was, let's get as many people insured as we can, so that we don't have, the idea is to increase the health of all. Because if people don't have a way to get health coverage, their conditions only become worse and they only become more expensive. So you have this snowballing effect where if you can treat someone early for diabetes and you can give them the care and the treatment and the education that they need, you can save thousands of dollars down the road by getting them preventative care. So the idea was, long-term, big picture, more people that have health insurance, the less that we have to spend on health care as a whole, because we have a healthier population.
Yes. And so as CEO of Black Hills Surgical Hospital here in Rapid City, how does that affect your hospital in generally or directly?
Well, South Dakota did not opt for Medicaid expansion. So unlike a number of different states that did, they did not. So at the time that, well, like a year and a half ago, South Dakota was poised to expand Medicaid before the election of the new president, and there were discussions in play, and they involved the IHS because there were some claims that were being covered by South Dakota's Medicaid program, which in reality and law should have been covered by IHS. So the idea was, if the claims that could be covered by IHS that should have been covered by IHS could be transferred over to IHS, that would free up dollars and that would help to fund the expansion of Medicaid. And I think Governor Dugard and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and our congressional delegation were very close to reaching an agreement in that regard. And then when there was the change in administration and the focus was on repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, it stopped. And you'll have to find someone smarter than me to explain what happened, because I don't know what happened. But that effort to expand Medicaid in South Dakota, it went away.
It almost seems like a direct result of that would be a lot of people who are being treated outside of the IHS system who are being left with hospital bills or bills that they cannot pay. And so is that happening at Black Hills Surgical Hospital as well?
Well, there are people that have hospital bills that they don't have insurance and they need to pay us. So when we have those people, we work out a payment plan with them, and they come into people that are uninsured with health insurance. It's very difficult for them to get care without having to dive into their financial resources. So we have a program that allows them to pay us at reduced rates for their medical care over time. And that's what happens. Yeah. But it's not an ideal scenario for them or for anybody, really.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. May, we're going to take a break and get a word from our sponsors. I just wanted to thank you for that great information.
Thank you. You're
doing
welcome.
well, sir. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
More than 2 million men and women have served in our military since 9/11. Now, many of them are transitioning back into civilian life. They're considering career options, writing resumes, starting businesses. ACP AdvisorNet can help. ACP AdvisorNet is a nonprofit online community where Americans can offer career advice to those who have served. Now we can serve those who served us by helping them to find their next career. Visit acpadvisornet.org.
When discrimination happens in our community, and it does happen,
then it's time to stand up
and speak out to make it stop.
Discrimination hurts and excludes.
We can be better than that.
People of Black Hills have a connection to each other, and none of us deserve discrimination.
The Rapid City Human Relations Commission can help with discrimination issues in housing, employment, and public accommodations.
And each of us, when we see it or hear it, can do our part to end discrimination.
You have a responsibility to stand up and speak out.
Know that earning a GED can increase your lifetime earnings, can be a first step into a university or technical institute. But maybe you don't know how easy preparing for the GED test is anywhere in the Black Hills. Classes are free, a service of the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills and Black Hills Special Services Cooperative. Go online to learn more or call. Earning a GED can change your life.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Our guest today is Mr. Bill May, CEO and General Counsel of Black Hills Surgical Hospital here in Rapid City. Mr. May, could you talk a little bit about our community of Rapid City, where you see it as far as business, as far as medical, as far as even race relations? Where are we at with Rapid City from your perspective, as former chairman of Chamber and the work that you're doing for our community?
Well, I'm very encouraged in general by things in Rapid City. I moved to Rapid City in 1987, so 30 years ago I was a Rapid Cityan, and I've lived here ever since. I've lived in Rapid City longer than any place else in my life, you know. And I've seen Rapid City change, and I've seen changes that are mostly good. And what I feel very good about in Rapid City is that it's becoming a more progressive and inclusive community. The younger folks that are living in Rapid City bring different worldviews in some cases than before. Not to say that their worldviews are better, but they're different. And they bring that, and I think that diversity, that difference adds a richness to the community. I think that the downtown Rapid City area, from when I came, is so dramatically improved. When I got here in '87, you know, it wasn't that long that the flood was there. And initially the flood sort of decimated the community in a way that it just showed in terms of the buildings and you know, empty storefronts and lack of options and choices in terms of places to eat and everything. And now we're blessed with a Main Street Square that's kind of a standard for the United States. We're blessed with restaurants and bars and eateries and activities and squares and parks and things like that, and that makes us a richer community, and that's really good. And I think that fuels a desire on the part of people to want to live in Rapid City. It provides a positive, good feeling about being downtown and being in Rapid City. So I think that that's huge. In terms of the healthcare market, you know, the Rapid City economy is one that it's kind of a service economy. When you put aside tourism, which is huge and significant, we are kind of a service community. We're kind of a banking community, we're a legal community, we're a healthcare community, we're accounting communities, we're business and retail and all of those things. We've got some manufacturing, but we probably don't have as much on the larger scale that a town such as Sioux Falls would have. And I think that that's a shortcoming that we have to address at some point in time. Is we have to pivot, in my view, to a more diverse community to provide economic opportunity. And one of the things that, when I was on the Chamber of Commerce and the chair, was economic opportunity, and economic opportunity focused also on Native Americans as well, because I feel that part of prejudice or part of the difficulties of race and Native Americans and whites relates to lack of opportunity for Native Americans, lack of almost not a glass ceiling but a metal ceiling, you know, where there's not the chances of advancement into the higher echelon paying jobs, and that's not all intentional, but it can work itself out by virtue of a strong education system, you know, rural American initiatives and what they're doing with education and cultural respect and you know, imparting the Native values in the children. All of these things, I think, are part and parcel of what we need to do to make the community as inclusive as we can, and so that we have the economic opportunity that's there, but not require anybody to surrender their cultural history as a cost of admission. You know what I mean? To get into that economic opportunity. So I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more high-tech companies. I'd like to see more companies that have wage scales that are in the higher to mid-high range, as opposed to lower wage jobs. You know, now everybody helps. Every business helps. There's no bad businesses. There's no bad economic activity. Well, there is some. You know, let's face it. But by and large, economic activity is good. It raises all the boats. But it would be nice to have the 70, the 80, 90, $120,000 jobs, but more of them.
Definitely, I'd love to see that. Mr. May, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for making Oyate Today a part of your evening.
You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Native Sun News Today.